Your bots.
Hi, Jeans. Thanks for joining me on DonnaJean's Coffee House of Horror. I am very excited about my guest today. She, in fact, is one of the two reasons that I started doing interviews. And I absolutely love, and you are going to love, Ms. Angela Goethals.
You're what the French call les incompetents.
What?
Did I pronounce that right? Goethals. Goethals. I'm so goofy. Just wait till you hear her, wait till you see her. You're going to fall in love with her too.
Welcome to Glen Echo, a picture postcard community that is itself representative of 1,000 small towns found all across America.
Excuse me, sir, hi. I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about your former neighbor, Frederick. And in Haddonfield, a prodigal son named Michael Myers has struck in a similar fashion on or near Halloween on at least 4 different occasions.
Now, you just flew in from a roundabout through some crazy weather, so I'm so glad to see that you are here and you are safe.
Oh, thank you so much. There are few places I'd rather be than with you in any way I can be. You know, I wish it could be in person, but this will do just fine for now. I'm so happy to see you.
Until we can see each other again in person and give the hugs.
Oh, yes.
It's been far too many.
I miss the hugs.
Me too. Me too.
I think, in fact, when we met, I think we hugged rather quickly because we're both huggers, and not everybody gets that. And sometimes it can be a little awkward, but like when you see another hugger and you like recognize that they are a hugger too, and you are too, it's like, oh, I just met you. I'm going to hug you now. And you're cool with it.
I have some wonderful, wonderful photos of when I met you, and I did that interview with Nathan. I have some wonderful photos that someone took of you and I hugging Nathan, and he's kind of standing, and we're both hugging on him, and it is just hilarious and wonderful, and he had no choice.
Yeah, no, we definitely sandwiched him at several points that weekend, and he's, you know, he pretends to be very curmudgeonly, but he loves it totally.
I actually did do an interview with him recently where we talked about his teaching acting, and you did come up, and we both talked about how wonderful and amazing you are there. So if your ears were ringing. Now I guess I'll get started on this interview aspect of things, although feel free at any point to talk about whatever you would want to talk about.
Okay.
But you started acting very young, and your first acting job was actually an off-Broadway play, The Widow Clare?
That's right.
And then a couple of years later, your film career started, including as the sister of Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. And your credits also include Jerry Maguire and, of course, Behind the Mask. And you know we're going to have to talk about that. But what got you into acting at such a young age?
So I grew up in New York City, and, you know, the culture of the city is so much about theater. And it's an amazing resource. It's a part of the fabric of the city. It's like, it's so vibrant there. And so I was lucky in that way because I didn't have to seek it out. It kind of was all around happening all the time. And my godmother took me to an audition for the play that you mentioned, The Widow Clare. And it was for the understudy of the little girl who was in The Widow Clare, who happened to be one very young Sarah Michelle Gellar, of Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame, among many other things. She's amazing. And we were both tiny little peanuts at that point. I think we're both the same age. So I feel like we were both around 9 years old. And Matthew Broderick starred in the show and was so charming. I mean, my sister and I gave him candy at Halloween, and like this sweaty candy that we'd been holding in our nervous little hands. And he was so gracious. He was sitting on a chair in his dressing room, putting his socks on, and he had one sock on and one sock off. And we just like stood there staring at his one naked foot and like holding this sweaty candy. And he like was so gracious. So thank you so much. Like, yeah, the play was such an amazing experience. It's a beautiful play written by Horton Foote, and his daughter Hallie played the title role. And the acting was so, it made such an impact on me as a kid. I didn't perform in the play ever, but I listened to and or watched it every night, and it really, it just blew me away. The language and the magic of it. So that was my start. And I went on more auditions after that, and I started to get more work. And again, because I was in New York, it was not that hard to have that happening alongside of my schoolwork and my ballet lessons and whatever else my sister and I were doing. It didn't feel like a big moment. You know, it felt like something else I was doing in addition to, you know, the other things that I was also doing, and, you know, homework and play dates and stuff like that. So, that's a very long answer to a very short question.
It makes complete sense. I actually grew up on Long Island myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So my mom and dad separated, and my dad ended up living in the city. So every other weekend I was jumping on the Long Island Railroad and taking my brothers in and spending the weekend in the city.
Wow.
And I know when you're saying that, I know exactly what you mean. I saw a couple of Broadway shows,
Yeah.
you know, when I was in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And it was one of those things that it's something that you do because it's there. And it's a very different experience than traveling as we do to conventions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think too, as I got older and as I continued to work and understand a little bit more about the craft of acting and kind of what the mechanics and sort of the, you know, started to really have a perspective on, you know, the like the insides of it, the machine, the sort of like the dance, the you know, just the way of life of it. I really, and looking back now, I'm so appreciative of having had that experience of being so immersed in it, growing up in New York, you know, seeing so many different levels of artistry, you know, from a street performer to someone in the subway, like playing an instrument or singing or tap dancing or break dancing, or, you know, playing drums on like, you know, one of those buckets, just brilliant, all the way up to, you know, Broadway and big musicals like A Chorus Line or Phantom of the Opera, you know, and everything in between. Off Broadway, The Widow Clare was off Broadway, and then, you know, as I got older and moved back to New York after college, I was also doing those shows, like, you know, Shakespeare in the Parking Lot, and, you know, just wherever we could, you know, find a space to do the work, we would find it, and we would, we would just work there, and the city provides that, and embraces that in such a beautiful way.
And I was going to ask if you had any inspiration, particular inspirations, actors or books or whatever, but boy, you're sharing so much inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I really do think that my upbringing and sort of seeing theater being created in all those spaces I mentioned, had a huge impact on me as an actor and an artist. Just recognizing that, that you can find a place to do your work, and just understanding that the best actors, the ones we all know, they're also finding those spaces to do their work, and it sometimes looks a lot different than what I'm describing. They're maybe not doing Shakespeare in the parking lot anymore, or maybe they are.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites are actors who do big, huge blockbuster films, and then also, do an indie film or do a short film that, a friend or relative wrote or produced, or do an off-Broadway play, or do a YouTube, just like,
Yeah.
just like the full spectrum of like how we can reach people, how we can better understand ourselves as artists, how we can continue to grow and explore. Yeah.
I'm very grateful, if we had to go through something like COVID and the lockdown, that it seemed to open doors to a lot of indie films and
Totally.
people who really wanted to reach out and create something, and other people became a part of it. And what a wonderful, if something good could come out of that, how wonderful that seems to have been something that did.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Did you have any difficulty, especially you were so young, making a transition from being in a play to being in a movie?
I think the difficult transition was less about the medium and more about, like, as I started to age up and become more self-aware and maybe more self-conscious, I would say. I think that was probably more of a difficulty, because I I feel really blessed that I got opportunities in theater, film, and television relatively early in my life and my career. So it was almost before I had a chance to like get really freaked out about it that I was already doing it. And so I had experiences in all of those things without the anxiety of really understanding, kind of like, oh my God, this is a big deal. Or like, oh wow, this is, requiring a whole different, muscle or, different skill set here, in this TV show than it is on this film set, or, in this rehearsal room. But then I think when I started to understand, that's when the difficulty happened. Like when I was a teenager, and then graduating high school, and then going to college and being, a young adult, and sort of like thinking, was this just a kid thing for me? Like, was I just a, somewhat cute kid who could read at an early age and like hit a mark? There was a real self-consciousness that kind of kicked in. And I'm grateful that I was able to go to college, and I kind of took a step back from professional acting. First it was me stepping back, and then it was the business stepping back from me, which wasn't exactly part of the plan. But so there was a bit of a dance there. And then, I had 4 years to sort of, do plays at Vassar and figure myself out a little bit, and really understand whether acting was something that I was truly drawn to, whether I was, uh, whether I could deepen the skills that I maybe had already, and fine tune some of the sort of natural impulses that I had been relying on as a kid, and just put more beneath it to sort of hold it up.
Mhm.
So that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of where I went through like an awkward phase, I think, which I think probably every child actor goes through,
Probably every child goes through
Yes,
in
oh my
general.
gosh, you're so right.
Proactive on top of
Omit
that.
the word actor, it's just like all humans. Yeah, for sure. And it does coincide with the awkward phase of us as people in general, that kind of teen awkwardness,
Self-doubt and all of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and sort of like, how seriously do I really take myself? And like, what is this thing? Where am I meant to be? Like, um, you know, uh, yeah, is it cool to be passionate about something? Or is it cooler to like not care about anything? Like, yeah, so I definitely went through that kind of questioning and kind of re reorienting and kind of organizing myself a little bit. And then when I got out of college, there was again this kind of like, um, reintroducing myself to the acting world as, a 21-year-old human instead of like a 15-year-old kid or younger. Um, and
That
some
had to be awkward because you're
it
wanting to show,
was.
"Yes, that was me," but
Yes, and
you
now I'm like this age, but I still looked really young, so there was that.
still look really young.
Thank you. Um, so yeah, I mean, in my early 20s, I was auditioning for, teenagers
Mhm.
and playing teenagers on TV in some cases or theater. But yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting and humbling journey, and kind of continues, to this day. I mean, I've had some kids, and I've sort of stepped back again, and now I find myself at another transition where I'm like, oh, here I am. Now I'm a mom in my 40s, and like, does this business still want me? Do I still want it? Like, how do we fit together? Um, Kind of thing.
It's so wonderful to hear you looking back and talking about the perceptions you had and how you were able to grow through them and see them. And it's so funny how we do. I mean, I'll be 60 in March. We can look back and the things that were so serious when we were 20, we can kind of laugh at ourselves that we took it that seriously, but
So,
know that that's all part of the transition. And it's so beautiful the way that you pieced all of that together.
oh, thank you, honey. Yeah, it is. It really like I'm sure you do too, because you're such a like beautifully introspective person and so full of love. I hope and I believe that you look back on your younger self with love now, as I'm trying to do more and more, instead of that like, oh, I was such a mess, or like, oh, I can't believe I, like crushed on that boy so hard, or I can't believe I, ruined that opportunity, or I, whatever it is, like all the things that we kind of, can look back and sort of, um, question or just, maybe not be as compassionate, or I don't know. It's a very I mean, aging is such an interesting exercise.
I often, to show my age, use the old line out of a Bob Dylan song. Um, I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now.
Oh,
And
I love
and,
that.
and I think just that in terms of the self seriousness.
Yes.
So
That's so beautiful and so true and so perfect. That perfectly, oh, Bob Dylan, what a genius, right? Oh my gosh.
well, I want to ask you, and I did. I ran past you before we started to record. If it was okay if I shared this with you, but I work caring for adults with intellectual disabilities, and one of the residents, and they're all amazing, and one of the residents is a real movie buff and loves movies. And when I'm going and working at a convention, if there's someone there that he knows was in one of the movies that he loves, he'll have me take a picture of them that I can give to the actor. And how happy it makes them is just something. And since I've known him, I started doing volunteer work at the home and then started working there weekends. And then when I retired from my full-time job, I started working there during the week. And ever since I've known him, every December, he runs around going, Home Alone is the best Christmas movie, DonnaJean. So not long ago, this past week, I took a video of him and sent it to you. Hey, Angela, this is Derek, and Derek lives where I work. And every December, this is what I hear.
Home Alone's the best Christmas movie, Angela.
Truly, the way that I do feel about it is that you have become part of so many people's lives in something that is meaningful to them. You know, did you have, well, I guess when you're a child, you're not realizing this is part of something.
Yeah.
How do you look back on that time yourself?
I mean, last year, I got together on a Zoom with some of my castmates from Home Alone. It was kind of a reunion of sorts. And a bunch of us were on there. Most of us were kids in the film. Our sweet Aunt Leslie from Home Alone, Terry Snell, who's brilliant, she was on there. And we had such a great time reminiscing. And what I realized during that Zoom was just the memories that certain people had that others didn't. The common thread was just like joy and fun, and except I will say my sweet Aunt Leslie shared that she was going through something as an adult human of which none of us were aware as kids that was not so great. And so she kind of shared that there was something in her personal life that was very hard. And we were able to receive that information and say, I mean, I said to her, I was in shock that she was going through something hard and grown up and painful, because she was such a light on set, and she truly was. And when you watch the movie, her character is that light and that joy. And I told her that, and she was happy to hear it. And I said, my goodness, as a grown up myself now, knowing that you were going through something that I now understand and I've not experienced, but I can only imagine how hard going through that, but coming to work and being this sort of light and joyful person and loving and warm, I was amazed. But I really, I mean, I look back on the movie, you know, watching it with my own children now is so surreal. And watching my young self, you know, as you said, not, you know, understanding really how big it was, or maybe how impactful it would become. it just, I feel so incredibly lucky that the universe put me in that place at that time with those people within that story. It's just such an honor. Like, you go down the list of people who we've lost, who were in that movie, who I got to, share space with, and John Hurd and John Candy and Roberts Blossom and and John Hughes, and just the gift of that, and then connecting with my my movie brothers and sisters and cousins, and all of us with kids of our own, some, not all, I should say, not all, but many. It's an incredible, I just feel incredibly honored and lucky. And I look back on it the way you would look back on like an amazing summer at camp, or an incredible slumber party, or birthday party, just something celebratory and joyful, and that you remember with such fondness and love.
That's actually just adds to the magic of the whole thing.
Aw.
That is just wonderful. Now I am gonna kind of jump ahead a little bit, because this is actually how I met you. And Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon is one of my favorite movies, has been. That's actually one of my, I'm not feeling good, what am I going to do? I'm going to kick back and throw something on that's a feel-good movie. That's like at the top.
Oh, I know. I love that. I love that that's what that is for you. And
so how did you end up getting involved with that, and the amazing Final Girl of Taylor Gentry? Anybody's watching this hasn't seen it, please see that film. It is just awesome.
Thank you, DonnaJean. I love it too. I came to it the way I came to pretty much everything else. I got a call from my agent, and I got some material, some sides to look over, and I drove my. It was probably a crappy car at the time, a relatively crappy car, to Century City in LA. I'm pretty sure that's where it was. It was like on Wilshire. The audition was in like a high-rise kind of fancy place. And my first my first audition was for the director, Scott Glosserman, the writer, David Stevie, the producers, and it was in a boardroom, and they were all sitting on one side of the table, and I was in a chair, somewhat set back, and I read for them the opening of the movie, which is the character Taylor doing recording footage for a docu-series that she's working on, and so it's a couple long speeches, and I thought it went pretty well. I got a good vibe from Scotty, because he's like a kid you just want to hang out with. He's like a perpetual teenager. He's so excited about life and art and books and movies, and he's an intellect, but he's like got a magical childlike spirit. So I felt good, but you never know. And I wanted it. I mean, in some ways more than maybe some other things that had come my way, because I was curious about it. It read differently. It kind of had like a spark, and I was like, I'm kind of into this. So I got a call back, and I was paired up with Nathan Basil, who's just an actor's dream. I mean, we got to read together. There were two other potential tailors in the waiting room, so that was awkward. But I got to do the movie, which I'm so happy that it was me. Yeah, and I read with Nathan. We read a few scenes. I was teasing him earlier about being, a Juilliard actor. He's just like the best. He's so he's so present and so alive and beautifully complicated and fun and playful and just all the things. So we had a good time reading together. I felt like we had good chemistry. And then I got a call from my agent and I was told that they wanted me to do the movie, and I was super excited. And I learned later that Scotty had actually asked Nathan, like, for his input, like he was going to be Leslie Vernon. And Scott, kind of said like, well, which of the tailors were you feeling? So yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. And then it was like this whirlwind, we shot in Portland, and the suburbs around Portland. And so there were costume fittings down in LA. And then, we were kind of hearing about location scouting and then we went up there, and it was just a huge labor of love. We, we're on a pretty tight budget, and but everybody was just so happy to be there and to be working on this great material. And Scott had never directed a movie, and there were some hilarious manifestations of his first time status, like that he would like wrap the sound department before we were actually done recording set. Like he'd be like, all right, sound is wrapped, and then they'd pack up all their equipment, and the AD would be like, Scotty, we have like 3 more pages of dialogue to shoot. And he'd be like, oh my God, I just wrapped sound. Like they're in their van going home. Okay. So, so there was a lot of like, improvising and kind of like, sort of adapting on the fly, pivoting. But we were also so game, and everybody was just, willing to get dirty, literally and figuratively, to just get in it and sort of play and explore. And we just had the best time. I love the movie. I love the cast. I love Scott. I love David. It's just a big, like, warm, fuzzy hug every time I talk about it.
What a cast. I mean,
I know.
You can't get, it's like a horror nerd's dream. It
right?
Really is. I mean, just some of the cameos, is Kane Hodder, but then you've got Robert Englund, who's in a pretty serious, heavy role there, and Scott Wilson as well, and Zelda Rubinstein. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Anybody who's a horror fan needs to see this movie. And it's scary, and it's funny, and it's serious, and it's not, and it's just got it all.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that that's the perception of it. Because I agree about the cast. I mean, and all of those people you mentioned, are incredibly experienced, and well-known, and in some cases incredibly famous. And they were all, there was no ego, there was no like sense of like a hierarchy of like, oh, well, I'm, like I'm kind of a big deal, and you guys are like, whatevs. There was none of that. It was like, it was very collaborative, from everyone, from Zelda, from Scott Wilson. There's a beautiful scene in the movie where Scott Wilson and Nathan are skipping rocks. They were just skipping rocks. Like, that wasn't in the script. They were just there on set, you know, waiting for the next thing. And, you know, they were just there together, and they started skipping rocks, and our DP Jaron just, you know, rolled camera, and it's in the movie.
That is fabulous. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
As a younger actor, even though you had been acting from the time you were a child, that did you feel like you took away any kind of lessons from being around some people that had been so learned and
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I could go on, and I already have, and I'm not, um, I'm not like I feel so strongly about the immense talent that I have been lucky enough to connect with and collaborate with. And I will say, as a general thing, I really feel that what I learned was how to work from so many different perspectives and in so many different ways that I can't even articulate them. I just felt like I was able to absorb it into myself, and hopefully, um, you know, little sparks of this person or that person, you know, are living in me now too. And I can kind of, you know, I can kind of um, turn up the volume of that one or that one, depending on where I am or what I'm doing. Um, because yeah, it's, I mean, it's so remarkable that we all bring ourselves to this work, and we all have vastly different ways of getting inside it and living in it and allowing it to live in us. And there's no wrong way. Like there really isn't. You know, there are actors I've worked with who are very who need to stay very much internal. Some might say in character. That sounds a little cliche, but just that they need to just kind of, you know, keep their distance and not socialize. And then there are people who, you know, 2 seconds before action, they're like, "Hey, and so then I was, you know, in this bar in Tahiti, and da, 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 da," you know, and then it's like action, and they're like, they're like, and you're, you know, it's unnerving sometimes. You're like, how do you do that? Like you just, you know, you just like you just land, you just land, and it's so there, and it's so awesome. But like 30 seconds ago, you were like telling a crazy story about being drunk in a bar in Tahiti. So um, that's not a real thing, by the way. Everyone's like, who was it who was drunk in a bar in Tahiti? I just
who is that?
but yeah, I again, it's I feel like I'm being a little corny with the like hashtag blessed, but like I really do at this point in my career and in my life, I feel like holy bananas. I've really been lucky to have been near some of the people I've been near, and been able to watch them do their thing.
Well, you've also got that driving force and the talent behind you that's got you there. So you'd have to throw that out. So you deserve credit for that. So,
Thank you, DonnaJean.
oh, you are very welcome. Now, you had recently done some work with audiobooks. Is that correct? Would
Yes.
you mind talking about that a little bit?
Not at all. I actually, the first audiobook I ever recorded was like before Audible was a thing. I did my first audiobook. It was a novel by Anne Brashares called The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. They ended up making a movie version of it, which was beautifully done, I thought. And I recorded that I was still in college, so it was probably like in the late 90s. And it's I love I love recording audiobooks. It's become work that I can do that feels very that feels very exciting to me as an actor, but that doesn't have the same requirement of being away from my family for extended periods of time, or I at this moment I have a home studio and I record in my home after I put my kids to bed. And so it kind of it fits very well into what I've got going in my personal life. But also I've connected with this incredible coach. She's a prolific narrator herself, Marguerite Gavin, Shannon Parks. She records under Marguerite Gavin, and she has so inspired me. I've worked with her for a number of years. We've on and off, but she really reminded me that recording audiobooks, prepping audiobooks, it's the same approach that you would prep a script for a play or a movie or a TV show. It's the same, essential work. It's like the basic questions, the who, what, where, who is this person? Where are they? Let me get real specific. Let me look around. Let me feel what this person's feeling. Let me sit in stillness for a minute before I press record, and let me imagine where I am. Let me imagine how this person speaks. What's their deal? Did they finish college and graduate school, or did they, ditch high school and get in their station wagon and drive cross country? And it's like it's the same thing. And that idea was so exciting to me. And I'd already recorded a lot of books, but I am approaching it now with this understanding that, that it's really, it's my actor self, and that's also, I think, something that, that Shannon is encouraging me to lean into, because not everyone who records audiobooks is an actor, but I happen to be one. So she's reminded me that, that's, the authenticity of that and the experience of that is useful and interesting, and and just something to to kind of lift up in my audiobook work. So
That's actually, I've talked to different people about voice acting.
yeah.
The first time I met and interviewed David Howard Thornton, I asked him to do a chipmunk voice because he's done chipmunk voices. But I never actually really thought about it. Nobody ever explained it about being an aspect of acting. And of course it is. The way that you say makes sense. Does it take a lot of prep time? Like, do you have to read through the whole book to get the feel for this person?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, at least reading through once, if not a couple of times, is definitely part of the prep that I do. Because, and it does depend on what you're reading. In some cases, you're reading, a first person narration, and so your character voice is your narrator voice. In other cases, it's not. So, there's a lot of, in the prep, there's a lot of that, like, how do I modulate this? Like, what does this sound like? Because if you don't do that work ahead of time, you're kind of like herky jerking along. Like, you get to a character and you're like, and then I said, wait, what? Wait, who is talking? What is it? Like, and you're like, that's not how that person sounds. Or like, you want to kind of get a run at it. And, I've had coaches and mentors say, like, what celebrity is this character in the book? And in some cases you can really, I mean, it doesn't, unless it calls for like, something really large and caricature-y. You don't want it to get over the top, but it's very useful, you know, as you're going through to make a note like Angelina Jolie or like, you know, I don't know, Robert De Niro, like, you know, and then you just have this, you know, this sense, and it's not going to sound like De Niro or Angelina probably, but it's going to have a like a flavor, like some kind of something that differentiates this character voice, because again, you're reading and someone's listening, so it's important that your characters are distinct and that people, you know, hear, you know, they hear the voice and they know, you know, who's speaking. I mean, sometimes it can get a little complicated or challenging, but it's a really wild exercise. It's really interesting to just be relying on your voice to tell the story, as an actor particularly, because, you know, we generally have our bodies and our movements and, you know, our expressions, and, you know, we have this whole palette to use. And with audiobooks, you know, your palette becomes a lot smaller. It's, you know, there are far fewer colors, so your voice has to be all the colors. And it's a really interesting challenge.
When you're reading, you create the image and the sound in your mind. But when you're listening to the audiobooks, your voice is helping to create that image in someone's mind. And that is really an amazing, like, beautiful thing to know, wow, you're helping to create in someone's mind the image of how does this person look and how are they moving.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really it's a really interesting medium, and along with what you were saying, it also, you know, it kind of it really it it asks of us as narrators, you know, how can you make choices that are strong but not too strong? Because again, as you say, like, it's not, you're not imposing something on someone. You're inviting them to imagine it for themselves. So you want to, it's a fine line, you know,
Yeah.
you want to be distinct and strong, and yet not, you know, overpower the the listener's, journey with the story in their own imagination.
Mm. Wow. It's powerful.
Yeah. DonnaJean, I could talk to you for hours.
I know. I could talk for you for hours. And whenever I can get together with you and see you, we're going to do coffee and talking and hugging.
Oh my gosh. So much coffee, so much hugging, so much talking. All the good things.
So what's next for you? Do you have anything planned on the horizon?
I am hoping to, I was taking an online acting class with a dear friend of mine from college named Matt Newton, who is brilliant. If you're in New York, you can take class with him in person. If you're not, you can look him up online. He's amazing. His instructors are great. My goal for the coming year is, get back in class and start auditioning again. I don't have any projects lined up, but I hope that's going to change. And for the time being, as my friend Matt likes to say, you know, just be in class, just be working out, you know, staying sharp, and you know, and try to maintain a state of readiness. It's like Hamlet says, the readiness is all. You know, it's like, just be ready. You won't be ready unless you're working, unless you're, you know, you're in the habit of sitting down, putting up a self-tape, you know, reading some material, making some choices, learning your lines, like this is all, you know, a part of it. So what's next for me is really, you know, kind of just to come full circle with our conversation. You know, being at another moment of, you know, of the dance with this crazy business, this crazy profession. You know, okay, all right, I see you. Like, how is this going to look now? And yeah, just kind of meeting the moment and bringing myself now as I am, you know, to this work again and saying, hey, like, you know, you want to do something? Like that's kind of what's next for me, is just like jumping back in, you know, getting in the sandbox and making some castles.
Once again, part of the reinvention from you knew me as the child, you knew me as the young adult, and now here I am.
That's right. Yes, the tired mom. Tired but happy. I love you, my babies.
Would you have any words of wisdom to somebody who was looking at getting into acting now?
I think my words of wisdom would start with the I don't want it to sound like a negative, but just the realness of how challenging this business is, and the understanding that it takes a lot of work and requires a lot of, you know, sort of inner resources and kind of a steadiness that you have to kind of keep finding. You have to kind of keep finding your center, reminding yourself that, you know, that it's a crazy business, that it's, you know, that there's a lot that's beyond your control, and that what you can bring is your authenticity and your hard work. So that's the first thing I would say, is just, you know, we all love it, but we have to know and understand that it's hard. And then the second thing I would say is, you know, is what my friend Matt, you know, has taught me since I've been in his class, is that you have to keep working at it. You can't wait for it to happen. You know, Matt is a big proponent of creating your own work. And that's a new idea for me. And I've been doing this a long time, but, you know, he's like, hey, old dog, here's a new trick. Why don't you write yourself a scene or a short and shoot it? Oh my God, what? But I don't know how to. Yeah, you don't know? We'll learn, you know, like ask some questions, like, you know, figure it out, do it. You know, and then the other piece of it is like understanding and embracing this weird new kind of post-COVID Zoom hybrid, you know, technology aspect. Right? This was not something that was happening when I first started in this business at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would go and you would be in the room and you would audition and you would either get the part or not. Now you're like on Zoom, you're in a Zoom waiting room, and then you're coming in and you're, you know, booking a job. You live in New York. This job is in, you know, Berlin, and you're flying across the, you know, world, you know, the next day based off a Zoom audition or a self-tape. It's like there's a lot of new protocol and technology that we all need to learn, and I'm learning it too. Like, what's your setup? What kind of mic do you have? You know, you need a good mic, you need a good webcam, you need like to understand how to light yourself. Not like what I have going on right now in my hotel room. This is not good lighting for a self-tape, but like there are all kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, words of wisdom are hard because I feel like I'm still kind of always learning and getting my, my butt handed to me in one way or another, getting surprised. But yeah, it's just do your art, and love it, and do it fully as yourself, and do your homework too. Figure out how to present yourself in the best way. Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit, and I need to mention this, and I wish I could go, but you're going to be a guest at the Final Girl Con in Austin on June 30th through July 2nd.
Yes.
So that is very cool because you very well should be there. Do you have any idea what is going to be happening with that, or just the fact that you're one of the final girls? And you are.
I mean, I will say when I got this this offer, I was so excited and I felt so proud. I was like, I mean, I know that this is movie magic and this is not real life, and yet there is something that feels really real about having portrayed a character like this in a film like this. And I think, I mean, I haven't really taken a poll. Maybe when I'm down there in Austin, I'll get like a final girl posse together and we'll have some drinks and sort of get to know each other. But I would imagine that anyone who's played a role like that in a film, where they're running for their lives and they end up surviving, like there's something that that there's like a reverb in your real self that feels kind of amazing and gratifying. So I'm so excited. I really kind of have no idea what to expect, and I almost don't want to know. Like I just want to sort of imagine that it's going to be this amazing high five of these awesome women, and and Austin's a great city. I did a movie there when I was a kid and I loved it, and so I'm just excited as all get out.
Well, any of you guys that can make it out there, get out there and see this lady.
Yes, please.
And please post pictures. Angela, I adore you. I love you. I can't wait to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us here.
DonnaJean, and to all of your people who love you as I do. We are so grateful that you are here on this planet and that you are this loving light and beautiful human, and that you've created this wonderful space for us to get together and have these amazing conversations. I love you so much, my friend.